What is going on, everybody? It's Jackson and Chase from Dinger Dudes, and today we are joined by former Miami Marlins pitcher Justin Nicolino. Justin, how's your day going? And thank you so much for taking time to join.
Yeah, man. No, I'm excited about doing this. I appreciate you guys reaching out and having me on here, but man, I can't complain. Sun's shining right now, good weather, so everything's going good.
Absolutely.
Well, I did want to get in my first question. I know you were drafted in 2010 by the Toronto Blue Jays out of high school, and instead of enrolling at University of Virginia, which I know you had a college baseball scholarship to go there, you signed a $615,000 signing bonus to go play pro ball. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, it's funny. That number that you just read off too, it's funny because that was my exact number. So I was in, I think it was like my senior math class. I don't know which one it was. I wasn't very good at math, and Um, I thought I was actually going to UVA the whole time. The recruiting as far as college was pretty consistent with me. I had a couple buddies that were a year older, that were going to some big D1. So like my college recruiting process started a little bit sooner than most because, we actually had three lefties on staff. So, um, I got recruited, pretty heavily just because of them as well. But the funny thing about that number is, I thought I was going to UVA. I really did. They were number one in the nation, and I wrote down on a piece of paper in my math class, and I think my parents still have it. But I made up a mock um, contract, right? So I made up a mock contract. It was like, I, Justin Nicolino, will, forego college for $615,000, and I, made a fake thing, signed it myself, and fast forward to the draft that following June, Toronto called, earlier than I expected. They offered me a certain number. I ended up telling them three times. And I said, "Hey, just meet me at my number. You guys know my number. Meet me at my number. I'm signing." And sure enough, by the fourth phone call, we got the deal done.
That was going to be my
Wow.
question. I was going to ask you what was the influence behind that, but that's great insight to hear that you wanted to sign and meet your number, which unfortunately, I could have went pro if I didn't get injured. I always make that
Okay.
excuse,
He doesn't mean
but
that. He doesn't mean that.
I don't actually mean that. I'm not athletic. This is why I do this.
Yeah, no worries, man. It's like honestly, man, like I think it's cool to be able to kind of go back in that memory bank of like, you guys asked that question, and I hear the number like because 615 is such a very random number. It was $200,000 over slot. Like this is also back in the day when guys could still negotiate more money compared to where now everything is slotted, and you're pretty much your slot is what you're getting paid and so
Right.
forth. So I was actually still able to negotiate back and forth and stuff like that. So it's funny because like you asked that question and it brought up those memories of I remember I was actually at a collision center getting my car fixed after getting into an accident, and that's when I got the call that morning of it. So it was kind of like, you know basically bringing up that story just takes me all the way back to that day. So it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. Well, I kind of want to jump forward a little bit in time with this
Yep.
question. So you hear players talk about times when they were traded, and a lot of times you hear how it hurt their morale and can affect their game mentally. And talking what Jackson just asked and what you just explained to us, you getting drafted to Toronto Blue Jays back in 2010 in the second round of the amateur draft, and in your 2012 season with the Lansing Lugnuts. Am
Yep.
I pronouncing that correct?
Yep. Lansing Lugnut.
Okay. Yes, sir. So we know you had an incredible season in 2012, going 10 for 4 with a 10.46 ERA, and it was a Midwest League All-Star that season. But the following season, you were dealt to the Miami Marlins as part of a 12-player deal. And I want to know if that move affected you in any way, especially after such a dominant season with the Lugnuts.
No, so obviously when you're traded, somebody wants you, right? So like in that perspective, one, I was also still very young. Like when I got traded, I just turned 21, right? Like I'm coming off my second year of pro ball. Like you said, I had a really good year. Um, but it was more of like confusing at first, right? Like I feel like every big moment in my career, I've always been somewhere. Like I remember I was at a Nordstrom rack and our assistant GM called me and I'm walking out because we were getting ready to go to Vegas for my 21st. And I get the phone call and it was just weird because it was just like, it's kind of late at night. And I'm walking out and he was like, "Hey man, I just want to let you know that that you're part of this trade. I can't really tell you names right now, but you'll see very, very soon who it's for. Um, one of the things that I was told is like, this deal doesn't get done unless you're in it. So that right there, one, being very young, just wanting to play pro ball, wanting to make it to the big leagues, like it was more so like, man, I got to start over with new people, but in the same, like, or new teammates, but in the same realm of it, it's like we're baseball players, right? Like we're constantly on the go. So you learn how to just pick up and adapt and, put your left foot in front of the other and just kind of keep going along. I mean, because it's still the same game, it's just a different organization. So, as far as the emotion, it was so hard to wrap my head around it too, because it actually took a week long to go through because it had to be approved through the commissioner's office and whatnot. So, people are calling me like, "Hey, dude, you're a Miami Marlin." I'm like, "Well, not yet. I don't know if it's actually going to go through or not." But as far
Right.
as emotions, man, I was still young and naive and just wanting to play. That where maybe if I was older and like, I had a family, like I have a family now to where like a little bit different, but back then it just was like, well, somebody wants me. So now it's my job to go out there and, pitch for this organization.
Well, the reason I was asking, and thank you for sharing that, by the way, but especially going through social media nowadays, like TikTok and Instagram, you see a lot of baseball players, retired baseball players, come out and talk about moments they were traded, and they all have a different story. They all have different feelings behind that trade. So I was very interested to see maybe what you felt like, especially like you said, that young in your career, like the very start of your career. I want to know maybe what your perspective on the situation was. So thank you for that insight because it's very interesting to
Absolutely.
hear from like a different point of view.
Absolutely. Like I said, like being that young, not having a wife, not having kids yet, it's just like, it's another opportunity to still play baseball. So it's like, obviously, somebody wants you. And that was my mindset. It was like the moment you go in, it's back to business, right? Like, essentially back then still like, baseball was still, a kid's game to me essentially because I was young. But yeah, I mean, as far as emotions, it just was like, all right, cool. I got traded, time to get adapted to a new organization and help them out any way I can.
Absolutely.
Now, after you were traded from Toronto to Miami, you made your MLB debut in 2015. I actually have this pulled up right here. There's two parts to this question.
Yep.
So you happened to face the Cincinnati Reds at the time. The Reds had guys like Votto, Phillips, and Frazier. What was it like going 7 innings, pitching a shutout, and securing your first MLB career win? And the second part to this question is I've asked a couple of former players in previous interviews. Do you remember? I know it was 2015. Do you remember the Miami Marlins lineup from your MLB debut?
Man, this little thing right behind me, that's actually the lineup card from my debut right there. So like
Oh, wow.
I don't know, like if I don't know if y'all can really see it, but like in the very bottom part of it, those are actually the cleats that I wore in that debut. And like the day after my debut, I never wore them again, and I put them in that shadow box. So I can tell you the lineup because I could cheat, but it's actually funny that you say that because Joey Votto just retired, right? Like yesterday.
Yeah.
Um, my first major league strikeout in my entire career was Joey Votto, who never struck out, right? So it was kind of a really, I got chills actually saying it right now because a guy who is an absolute baseball legend, retired, and then I'm now doing this, bringing back up memories, and I actually have the ball that's in that shadow box as well, so it's really cool. But just even deeper with that debut, the crazy thing that a lot of people don't know is the guy. So we'll kind of backtrack, right? So when I got traded from Toronto to Miami, one of the guys that was in that trade was Anthony DeSclafani. So fast forward to the end of 2014, he gets traded to Cincinnati. Now, he debuted with the Marlins. Then he goes to Cincinnati and has become parts of the rotation. So the day I find out I get called up, I'm making my major league debut against one of my best friends. So I actually started that game against DeSclafani, which was, really cool. First major league hit I ever gave up to was to DeSclafani. So that's he's always got that over me. But to be able to go 7 shutout just in any game is pretty special because back in the day, the mindset was as a starter, you go until Skip takes the ball. So mindset was always, I'm going 9 innings every time. And then until Skip comes and takes the ball, that's when my job has been done. And, I played with a guy named Jeff Mathis, and he had a phrase, and what he always said was, your job to go out there is to outlast the other starter for the other team. So that was the mindset. It was like, go out there and outlast the other starter and give your team a chance to win. And now as far as the lineup, I mean, I could cheat and tell you, but I think that wouldn't be as fun, but I know Dietrich hit 2 homers that game for me. I mean, he popped off for me. I mean, I can pretty much go around. I can't go in the order of
Mm.
like who, but I know Yelich was in left, Ozuna was in center, Stanton was in right. Dietrich was at third, Hedgefree was at short, second base was D. Gordon, Justin Bohr was at first, JT was my catcher, and I was on the mound.
Wow. You
Yeah.
know,
That's the fastest. Well, I mean, I know you have your lineup card right there, but that's the fastest any MLB player, pitcher, batter has named debut lineup. So that that was awesome.
it's kind of
I'm
crazy too.
for that.
So I'm an big Atlanta Braves fan. So hearing you say the name of Zuna and knowing the type of player he is now and
Mhm.
remembering his younger days with the Miami Marlins is just really crazy to think about, especially knowing that you played alongside him too.
No, absolutely. We had an incredible line. I mean, we had Ichiro as our fourth outfielder that year too, as well. So it's like, I grew up watching Ichiro just like a lot of people, but then like, fast forward to, now I'm older, I'm 23 years old in the big leagues and he's now my teammate after literally growing up watching this guy. Not only that too, but watching other play, watching Joey Votto, watching Jay Bruce, like all the names that we all grew up watching and idolizing to then now I'm on the same field with them playing the same game. It's very nostalgic to go back in the memory bank like that.
Absolutely. So I'll move on to my next question, and I'm going back to your minor league days. So I know your first 2 seasons in the Marlins organization, you won the Pitcher of the Year in both the Florida State League in 2013 and in the Southern League in 2014. So I want to know, what did those accomplishments mean to you, not only personally, but also as a player who was still trying to make the major league at that time?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible to think about like my first year, 4 years of pro ball, like it went as special as they did. Anytime you win any type of accolade, right? Like, there's always going to be meaning behind it. But the fact that I was able to do that back to back years with my first 2 years with the organization, just was like I was saying earlier, like I was young and naive and ready to do whatever I could to help the organization that I was with. But I've always had this mentality of, I get back then, obviously a lot more, it was on a 5-day rotation, but I always had the mentality of like, I get one day a week to do my job. The other 4 days, I try to be the best teammate that I can possibly be. But the one day that I get to pitch, you're going to get everything that, I have in me on every 5 days. So I took a lot of pride on putting the team on my back on the days that I started and trying to be that leader on the field to establish, from the get-go, from pitch one, that I was going to go out there and try to be a workhorse for my team and stuff like that. But it's funny because like my kids weren't around then, and they sometimes think that dad isn't as athletic as I might look, but being able to like have that type of stuff that eventually one day we'd be able to look back on, it's really cool. Like I have up in my attic here, I still have those accolades. Those are going to always
Right.
be and stuff like that. And I have a couple of my championship rings from some of my seasons and stuff like that. So that year in 14 was really, 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 really special. I'll never forget. It was like June 28th or something. We had a benches clearing with the Birmingham Barons, and we were playing okay at that point, man. But that 2014 year, after we got in that benches clearing brawl, our season turned around, and I think I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure we won to finish out the year of that year in 14 just to make the playoffs. I think we won 21 out of our like last 23 games. So
Oh, wow.
it was pretty incredible. We had to win the last 10 games of the year. No losses. We had to go 10-0 pretty much to make the playoffs, and we did. And then we pretty much just steamrolled through the playoffs. So those years are really, 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 really special.
That is insane to hear. That's a crazy story.
Yeah. It was fun. And like I said, too, like we had some really, really good, talented guys on those teams that, I mean, JT was our catcher, and he's still obviously, who JT is now.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
Chase, you can ask your next question.
Okay, well, so I know Jackson asked you about your MLB debut where you talked about against the Cincinnati Reds,
I want to jump to 2016, April 27th of 2016, where you had another dominant performance. It was against the LA Dodgers, where you posted two strikeouts, but you only gave up two hits and 7 innings. You, of course, held the Dodgers scoreless and a Marlins 2-0 win. But can you share what you remember about that amazing start and what it meant to you as your first game? Because that was your first game back in the majors that season, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah. So crazy thing is I actually found out a week and a half before that I was going to be making that start, but I had to wait. Couldn't really tell anybody. But a cool thing about that series and that outing was that was the first time the Marlins had ever swept the Dodgers in LA. Obviously the Dodgers are who they are. Plus,
Right.
two, that was the first year that Mattingly and his crew came over from LA that year, actually. So him going back home and we ended up sweeping them, stuff like that was really cool. Jose Fernandez started the game after me. But that outing, man, I got to a point in my career where I wasn't a big strikeout guy, but I knew how to change speeds and stuff like that. And with a lineup like that, that was all it was about, was just changing speeds, being able to keep them off balance, being able to make them hit the pitches that I want them to hit and stuff like that. And I think I had three, maybe four, if I'm not mistaken, key double plays in that game. So that was the biggest thing is I learned how to pitch to contact, slow speeds down, and really, was able to kind of just keep feeding off what the two guys did before me the two nights before. So that's the biggest thing with baseball is like, your starter goes out there night before and does a good job. You want to follow suit and do the same thing. So that was my mentality, was just, hey, I'm coming up, my first start of the year. We just took the first two games. I'm trying to fill in whatever way I can do to fill in and give our team a chance to win. That was my mindset. And, that game ended up being a really good game for me and stuff like that. And against a really good lineup, but also too, it's always really cool pitching in Dodger Stadium.
Absolutely. I mean, awesome to hear that you're a part of a rich Marlins history. And like you said, against a team like the Dodgers too, and this like the story behind that series too is just incredible to hear to know that you were a part of that history.
Yep, absolutely. It was definitely a blast. Anytime you can sweep a team in the big leagues, but even sweep in general is a pretty special feeling.
Absolutely, especially on the road.
Yep,
The especially in LA.
Yep.
Now, this isn't related to my last question, but I did want to ask this because I didn't get to ask it last interview. Miami Marlins are some of my favorite. I'm a Cardinals fan, but some Miami Marlins are some of my favorite jerseys and hats to like have. Do you have a favorite hat jersey from your career?
Um, Man, to be honest with you, you get to keep a lot of jerseys and a lot of jerseys are special, but probably my most special and sacred jersey is my Jose Fernandez jersey that
Mm,
um we all wore 16, right after he passed away.
right.
I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. But the crazy thing about that is we all wore the number 16. We had a patch on there, but the reason why it's so special is because every guy that was on that team ended up signing the back of it. So, because that was something that was very traumatic to everyone, not only to our lives, but just the baseball world in general. I always enjoyed the black jersey, but that jersey that we all wore after he passed away, and we all signed it to where 100 years from now, when my kids have my stuff, they'll be able to go through and just see some of the names that were on there. Obviously not ideal to have a jersey like that is, signed because of that reason, but that's probably my most sacred and favorite jersey that I do own.
That's awesome. I loved watching Jose Fernandez pitch on that
We all
mound.
did.
We all did. He
He
was
was honestly, man, he was one of a kind, and I have stories for days of that guy and how special he was, man. It just, gone too soon, and he was destined for greatness. It just getting to the funny thing was, man, is as good as he was, there was times where he'd show up. Guy never really had a routine. He knew how to pitch. He was very smart. Loved pitching in Miami, obviously, hence by his record and stuff like that. But man, that guy could show up and be like, "Hey, how many strikeouts do you want me to have today?" And we'd be like, maybe 10, and he'd go out and punch out 12, right? Like he was that gifted, that I know people got to see it obviously on TV and stuff like that, but just behind closed doors, man, he was a kid, and it was it was special to be a part of that group.
That's fantastic to hear. Now, I did want to get to my final question before we wrap up this interview. I know after from your departure from Miami, you were part of the organizations like the Cincinnati Reds, Minnesota Twins, and the Chicago White Sox. After that, you ended up going to China. We've interviewed guys who have gone to the KBO, MPB, but never a guy who went to China during COVID and Mexico as well. Can you talk about your experience playing outside of the States?
Yeah, so it was actually Taiwan.
Oh, Taiwan.
Taiwan, it's a tiny little island. The way to describe it, if you drove from the very top of the country to the bottom in a car, it only take you about 7.5 hours. And the bullet train, it'd take you 2.5 hours, maybe three max. And in a time where not only it was crazy in my life, everyone's life, but I was seeing life 12 hours ahead of time during, you know, an epidemic, right? Which is COVID and stuff like that. So a lot of baseball players that weren't on a big league roster, a lot of my buddies got pushed out of the game because of COVID. And I was over there, and my wife and my oldest daughter, were actually stuck here in the States, and we spent about 4 months separated. We had to go through a lot of paperwork. We had to go through my wife had to go through the Taiwanese embassy in Miami. I had to get, I had to show that I was actually a worker there, because, I'm in a foreign country during COVID.
Right.
The whole world is being shut down, stuff like that. So it was crazy because I was literally seeing life from a very different perspective because I was not in America. I was not in the US. I was seeing everything. I was pretty much not able to watch the news because we were 12 hours ahead. I'd have to wait to talk to my wife and my daughter to kind of find out what was really going on at the time. And, it was tough because we were 12 hours ahead. So I'd have to stay up late to talk to my wife and my daughter and then get up really early because of the time change, the time zone difference. So it was very, it holds a special place in my heart. That's why I ended up getting hurt when I was over there. And, coming back was tough because it was still COVID and I wasn't getting really any answers and stuff like that. But being able to play over there and play in a different culture was really unique. When I talk to my athletes now, at the job I work at now, it's, like I said, I've played this game globally, seen different cultures, seen different countries and stuff like that. And, looking back on my career, it's pretty special to say that I was able to play for as long as I did, but also be able to play in very unique countries in different places and see different cultures of the game. So, and then playing in Mexico last year was definitely different, higher altitude, right? So pretty much every field is like Coors Field, if not more. Ball flies. It's a tough place to pitch, but it's still the same game, right? Pitcher's got to throw the ball, hitter's got to hit the ball. Your job is to get outs and, keep as least amount of runs on the board as possible. Give your team a chance to win. But for me, man, it's special looking back because now helping the younger athletes or just helping that next wave of baseball players. It's like, listen, baseball's still going to be the same game. It's different culturally, but anytime there's an opportunity to go play baseball, go play. The biggest thing that I think I can tell anyone is like, if there's an opportunity to play anywhere, go play, because at the end of the day, you can't play this game forever. So try to take the most advantage that you can of your opportunities as frequently as possible.
Absolutely.
That's very insightful to hear because we haven't heard that perspective when talking about foreign countries yet from a baseball player. So that was amazing to hear. But unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today because we have our bosses calling us outside, unfortunately. But Justin, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to do this interview. This will be up
Absolutely.
YouTube and Spotify within the next couple of days. Is there anything you'd like to shout out? Anything you'd like us to plug in the descriptions?
No, man, I appreciate you guys reaching out, and I love the questions, man. It's always cool being able to kind of go in the memory bank and bring up some really cool memories and stuff like that, and be able to chat about it with guys that love the game just as much as I do.
Well, thank you so much for all the insight that you shared. Because, like you said, like
with every interview, it's a different perspective, it's a different point of view. So, like hearing your story, your background, what you had to go through, and your insight, it's very cool just to hear that and to know that not every baseball player, they all have a different story, they all have a different perspective. So, to hear yours today was very special to us as well.
No, I appreciate it, man. Like, thank you for letting me, give a little insight into my career, man. Because sometimes,
Sure.
sometimes I don't really talk about it because it's just, life goes on and you got to keep going,
Right.
keep chugging along. So, no, I appreciate it, guys. I had a blast and, love the questions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for on the show. It was an honor having you on. It really was.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Love to do it again anytime.